Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. After decaffeinating coffee beans, some coffee manufacturers sell the caffeine they collect to soft drink companies, as well as pharmaceutical companies. Bananas are curved because they grow towards sunlight through a process called negative geotropism. While the bunches hang downward because of gravity, each individual fruit begins orienting itself in the opposite direction, growing toward the light. This gradually produces the characteristic curved shape we associate with bananas. Plants use complex hormonal mechanisms to detect gravity and light, adjusting growth rates in different parts of their tissues. The Great Pyramid of Giza was the tallest human-made structure in the world for 3,871 years, until Lincoln Cathedral was built in England in 1311. This extraordinary record illustrates the level of engineering achieved by ancient Egypt, as no other structure managed to surpass it for dozens of centuries. It is estimated that the pyramid was built with millions of stone blocks and was originally covered with polished limestone that reflected sunlight. Despite earthquakes, erosion, and the loss of part of its outer casing, it remains one of the most impressive ancient structures on Earth, and the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing today. Because wasabi is so difficult to cultivate, many restaurants outside Japan serve a mixture of horseradish, mustard, and food coloring to imitate it. Authentic wasabi requires very specific growing conditions, including clean, cool, constantly flowing water, moderate temperatures, and several years of cultivation before reaching maturity. For this reason, it is usually considerably more expensive than imitation products. People who have tried authentic wasabi often describe its flavor as more complex and fresh, with a heat that is felt primarily in the nose and fades quickly. In Japan, high-quality wasabi is often grated just before serving to better preserve its aroma and flavor. Apollo 11 landed on the moon only 66 years after the Wright brothers' first controlled flight. The pace of technological advancement during that period was extraordinary. Humanity went from flying for only a few seconds in a wooden and fabric aircraft to sending astronauts to another world. Between those two events came milestones such as the development of commercial airplanes, jet engines, radar, long-range rockets, and the first artificial satellites. When astronauts reached the lunar surface in 1969, millions of people were still alive who had been born before any form of powered flight existed. At the center of the galaxy Holmberg 15A lies one of the most massive black holes ever discovered. Astronomers estimate that it has a mass of around 40 billion times that of the Sun, making it one of the most extreme objects known in the universe. Tooth enamel is capable of repairing itself through the use of minerals found in saliva, as well as fluoride from toothpaste and much of the public water supply. This process, known as remineralization, occurs constantly and helps repair microscopic damage caused by acids produced by bacteria in the mouth and by certain foods and beverages. Saliva plays a crucial role because it supplies calcium and phosphate while also helping neutralize acids. However, if wear or tooth decay progresses too far, enamel cannot fully regenerate the lost structure. The ancient Romans recycled their urine by collecting it in containers and leaving them on the street. The urine was later gathered so it could be converted into ammonia, which they used for various purposes such as bleach and even mouthwash. Urine was also highly valued by workers in Roman laundries, known as phalonicae, where it was used to clean and treat fabrics. Its value was so widely recognized that authorities taxed its collection during certain periods. This practice gave rise to the famous saying attributed to Emperor Vespasian that money has no smell. What seems strange today was considered a useful and everyday resource in ancient Rome. Birds are unaffected by capsaicin, the compound that makes chili peppers spicy. In fact, if rodents keep eating the birdseed you put outside, you can make it spicy and that will discourage them from eating it. This biological difference benefits many chili-producing plants because birds can eat the fruits and disperse the seeds over long distances without damaging them during digestion. Mammals, on the other hand, usually feel the burning sensation and tend to avoid these foods. For this reason, some birdseed manufacturers add chili extracts to their mixes to discourage squirrels and other unwanted visitors. John Brower Minnick was not only the heaviest person who ever lived, but also the largest known primate in history. He even exceeded the estimated maximum size of Gigantopithecus. At his peak weight, he was estimated to have exceeded 1,389 pounds, an extraordinary figure even among the most extreme medical cases ever recorded. His condition required constant care, and became the subject of study for specialists interested in the limits of the human body. Despite his enormous size, he managed to lose hundreds of pounds during a lengthy medical treatment, also setting one of the largest documented weight loss records. Universal Pictures failed to include a copyright notice on the 1963 film Charade, starring Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. As a result, the movie entered the public domain immediately upon its theatrical release. According to Guinness World Records, the greatest number of living generations in a single family was 7 in 1982, achieved by the Bunge family in the United States. The great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was 109 years old, followed by her 89-year-old daughter, followed by her 70-year-old granddaughter, then her 52-year-old great-granddaughter, followed by her 33-year-old great-great-granddaughter, and her 15-year-old great-great-great-granddaughter. She gave birth to a great-great-great-great-grandson on January 21, 1989. The greatest documented weight loss belongs to Khalid bin Mohsin Shahadi of Saudi Arabia. He became one of the heaviest people ever recorded, weighing around 1,345 pounds. After an extensive medical and rehabilitation process, he lost approximately 1,195 pounds, becoming one of the most extraordinary weight loss cases ever documented. Today, his weight is around 150 pounds. Higashiyama Zoo in Japan is home to a western lowland gorilla named Shibani, who became known as the most handsome gorilla. His rise to fame was so enormous that there was an increase in attendance by young women who wanted to see him in person. Staff had to put up a sign asking people to stop shouting his name at the exhibit because it made him feel uncomfortable. The Sherpas are an ethnic group of Tibetan heritage native to the Himalayas. For most people outside Nepal, the word Sherpa generally means mountain guide. However, the term originally refers to a people with their own culture, language, and traditions. Many Sherpas became internationally known for their crucial role in expeditions to Mount Everest and other high-altitude peaks. Various studies have found that they possess physiological adaptations that allow them to function better in low-oxygen environments. Thanks to their experience, knowledge of the terrain, and physical endurance, they have contributed to countless successful climbs and are considered an essential part of the history of Himalayan mountaineering. There is a Japanese work philosophy called Kaizen, which means finding better methods to complete a task rather than doing it the same way every time. This approach is based on the idea that small, continuous improvements can produce extraordinary results over time. The philosophy was widely adopted by numerous Japanese companies after World War II and became especially well known for its influence on manufacturing and quality control processes. One of its most distinctive characteristics is that it encourages everyone, from executives to frontline employees, to propose changes that make work safer, more efficient, and easier. Developers designed moving images on computer screens to prevent screen burn-in when a computer was idle. This is where the term screensaver comes from. On older cathode ray tube monitors, a static image displayed for a long period could leave a permanent or semi-permanent mark on the screen. Early screensavers displayed geometric patterns, floating text, or constantly moving figures to prevent this problem. Over time, they also became a form of entertainment and personalization, leading to famous designs such as virtual aquariums, animated mazes, and the iconic three-dimensional pipes that appeared on millions of computers during the 1990s. Ireland currently has the highest population in its modern history since the Great Famine of the mid-19th century. Before that tragedy, the country's population reached approximately 8.5 million people. Following the famine and mass emigration, the figure declined dramatically for decades. After a long period of recovery and growth, Ireland's population has once again surpassed that levels recorded since that era, reaching record highs today. The Michelin Man has a fluffy white dog also named Bubbles. The reason the Michelin Man is white is that tires were not dyed black until 1912. The character, officially known as Bibendum, was created in the late 19th century and remains one of the oldest advertising mascots still in use. His appearance was inspired by a stack of tires, an image that caught the attention of Michelin's founders and gave rise to one of the most recognizable commercial symbols in the world. It is possible to eat stink bugs if you can get past the smell. They add an apple-like flavor to sauces and are an excellent source of iodine. In various regions of the world, different species of insects have been part of traditional diets for centuries and continue to be consumed today. Insects are valued for their protein, mineral, and nutrient content, and they require fewer resources to produce than many conventional food sources. During the 1920s and 1930s, people in Australia held chariot races, but their trusty steeds were motorcycles instead of horses. The drivers even dressed in Roman-style outfits and were given Roman names. Formicophilia is an uncommon term that describes an interest in the sensation of insects such as ants and other small creatures crawling and gently biting on the skin. The term was introduced by Ratnan Duaraja and John Money in 1986, and it comes from the Latin word formica, meaning ant, and the Greek word philia, meaning affinity or fondness for something. It is illegal not to vote in Australia. If a citizen fails to provide a valid excuse for not voting, they are required to pay a fine of $20. Mandatory voting was introduced at the federal level during the 1920s to increase voter participation in elections. Since then, Australia has consistently maintained some of the highest voter turnout rates in the world. Citizens are not required to vote for a specific candidate, but they must either cast a ballot or provide a valid explanation for their absence. When your adult teeth grow in, the roots of your baby teeth are dissolved by specialized cells called odontoclasts. As this process continues, the primary teeth gradually lose their anchoring and eventually loosen until they fall out naturally. Most children lose 20 baby teeth over several years before completing the transition to their permanent teeth. Interestingly, adult teeth are already developing within the jaw bones long before they emerge into the mouth. Opossums love eating ticks and can virtually eliminate them from your yard in a single season. A single opossum is capable of eating 5,000 ticks. In addition to feeding on numerous invertebrates, opossums also consume slugs, beetles, small rodents, fruit, and carrion, making them important contributors to ecosystem balance. They are surprisingly resilient animals and possess a remarkable natural resistance to several venoms and diseases. Although they are often misunderstood because of their appearance, they are generally calm and non-aggressive animals. When threatened, they are more likely to flee or resort to their famous strategy of playing dead than to attack. Surprisingly, glazed donuts at Dunkin' Donuts contain fewer calories than traditional-style donuts. This is partly because many specialty varieties include fillings, extra toppings, or denser doughs that significantly increase their calorie content. Donut chains often offer dozens of options with very different nutritional profiles, so a product's appearance does not always reflect how many calories it contains. The custom of dipping bread in olive oil and vinegar originally began in San Francisco, not Italy. The practice became popular in Italian-American restaurants during the second half of the 20th century, where it was served as a simple and inexpensive way to welcome diners while they waited for their main courses. In many parts of Italy, bread is traditionally eaten on its own or alongside other foods, and the combination of olive oil and balsamic vinegar for dipping bread was not as common as many people outside the country assume. Astronauts are required to have healthy teeth in order to go into space because the forces of acceleration are very strong. Humans also lose bone density while in space. Because space missions take place in isolated environments where medical care is limited, astronauts must undergo rigorous health examinations to reduce the risk of emergencies during flight. A seemingly minor dental problem can become a complicated situation when you are hundreds of miles above Earth. The Palace of the Parliament in Romania is the heaviest building in the world, weighing around 9,036 million pounds. The cost of heating and electricity alone exceeds $6 million per year, roughly the cost of powering a medium-sized city. A goat from an extinct species was cloned in an attempt to bring it back to life, but it died shortly afterward because of respiratory problems. Although the experiment failed, scientists hope that it may help pave the way for future returns of other species. The animal belonged to the Pyrenean ibex, a subspecies of wild goat that disappeared in the early 21st century and became the first extinct animal to be temporarily brought back through cloning. Since then, advances in genetics, DNA sequencing, and biotechnology have fueled numerous projects focused on the conservation of endangered species. Reality television stars Heidi Montag and Spencer Pratt revealed that they spent most of their $10 million in earnings in 2010 because they believed the world was truly going to end in 2012. Mexican Revolutionary General Pancho Villa starred in a biographical film about himself in 1914 called The Life of General Villa. The movie contained both staged battle scenes and footage of actual combat from the Mexican Revolution. The artificial Christmas tree was developed during the 1930s by Addis Housewares, a company that manufactured toilet brushes. Artificial trees became popular after real trees became difficult to obtain following World War II. In 2018, an elevator carrying 6 people in a Chicago skyscraper fell 84 floors and trapped them inside. Fortunately, firefighters were able to rescue the passengers, and none of them required hospitalization. When singer Bill Withers wrote the song Ain't No Sunshine, he was 36 years old and worked in a factory that made airplane toilet seats. When the single achieved gold record status, his record company presented him with a gold toilet seat. According to data from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, there is approximately a 40% chance that someone will get away with murder in the United States. There is also about a 50% chance that someone will avoid punishment for assaulting another person. Not everyone has voluntary control over the tensor tympani muscles in their ears, which can produce a rumbling sound. People who can consciously contract these muscles often describe the sensation as a low buzz or a sound similar to distant thunder inside the head. This ability appears to be relatively uncommon, and many people do not even know it exists. The middle ear muscles also serve an important function by helping reduce the transmission of very loud sounds to the inner ear. However, the ability to activate them voluntarily varies greatly among individuals, and it is still not fully understood why some people can do it while others cannot. Countess Elizabeth Bathory was a Hungarian noblewoman and, according to Guinness World Records, the most prolific female serial killer in history. During her trial, more than 300 witnesses and victims testified. It was reported that the highest number of victims attributed to her was 650. She was imprisoned in isolation and died 4 years later. McDonald's and the United States Embassy in Austria have partnered to help American tourists who become stranded abroad. Americans can go to any McDonald's in the country and will be given both a phone number and a telephone to contact the embassy if necessary. Reading while using the bathroom has been a common practice throughout human history. Many bathhouses in ancient Rome contained libraries with scrolls. Roman public baths were much more than simple sanitation facilities. They served as important social centers where people could talk, conduct business, exercise, and spend several hours of their day. Some complexes included gardens, meeting halls, works of art, and extensive collections of texts for entertainment or study. The habit of using that time to read has continued for centuries and has adapted to each era, moving from scrolls and printed books to magazines, newspapers, and modern electronic devices. In the painting The Old Fisherman, the man depicted has an unusually asymmetrical face. However, if the right side of the image is mirrored, a devil sitting on a coffin with a stormy sea behind him can be seen. The complete artwork represents both the good and the bad sides of being human. Cyclist Thomas Stevens was the first person to travel around the world by bicycle from April of 1884 to December of 1886. He rode a high-wheel bicycle and packed only socks, a spare shirt, a raincoat that doubled as a tent, a bedroll, and a small revolver. Dr. Washington Sheffield was a dental surgeon best known for inventing modern toothpaste. He also invented collapsible toothpaste tubes after his son visited Paris and noticed artists preparing their paint palettes using the same basic idea. Reindeer meat is one of the healthiest meats to eat in the world, and people in Norway love eating it. It contains less fat than beef, has essential fatty acids, is packed with vitamins and minerals, and more. Norwegians prepare dishes such as smoked reindeer, grilled reindeer, reindeer pizza, and reindeer tartare. Australia has the highest rate of skin cancer in the world. 2 out of every 3 Australians will be diagnosed with the disease by the age of 70, and 80% of all cancers diagnosed are skin cancers. In 2017, 97-year-old Harlan Fairweather was the oldest recorded person with a living parent. His mother, Violet Brown, was 117 years old, and 5 months after Harlan passed away, Violet also died. The Saudi royal family is worth $1.4 trillion, which is 16 times more than the estimated net worth of the British royal family at $88 billion. Like the British royal family, they are extremely private about their wealth, despite reports suggesting that they live highly luxurious lifestyles with enormous spending. Lions are capable of roaring at volumes of up to 114 decibels because their vocal cords are square-shaped rather than triangular like those of most animal species. Their roar can be heard from several miles away and serves important purposes such as marking territory, locating other members of the pride, and warning potential rivals. Males tend to roar more frequently, especially at night when sound travels farther. This powerful vocalization allows them to communicate without traveling long distances across the savanna. Tyromancy is the practice of divining the past, present, and future by interpreting omens found in cheese. The shape, number of holes, mold patterns, and other characteristics of cheese were used to predict love, money, or rain. Between 2011 and 2013, China used more cement than the United States used during the entire 20th century. This enormous consumption was driven by one of the fastest urban expansions in history, including the construction of entire cities, high-speed rail networks, bridges, highways, airports, and massive residential complexes. During those decades, millions of people moved from rural areas to urban centers, creating an unprecedented demand for infrastructure. China is also home to some of the largest engineering projects in the world, many of which required colossal amounts of concrete. Geologists classify the Hudson River Valley as a fjord, similar to the fjords found in Norway. This landscape was formed when enormous glaciers carved deep valleys during the last ice age, and ocean water later flooded those depressions. The Hudson River is unusual because its lower section is influenced by tides from the Atlantic Ocean, which can be felt many miles inland. Although it is commonly associated with a traditional river, much of its southern stretch shares geological characteristics with the famous Scandinavian fjords. The valley's deep waters also allow large vessels to navigate far from the ocean coast. Jack Daniel learned how to distill whiskey from an African-American enslaved man named Nathan Nearest Green. Daniel named Green his master distiller, making him the first African-American master distiller in the country. In fact, 3 descendants of Uncle Nearest still work at the Jack Daniel's distillery today. The voting age in Brazil is 16, and voting is mandatory for all literate citizens between the ages of 18 and 70. Brazil introduced mandatory voting in 1932 and lowered the voting age from 18 to 16 in the Constitution of 1988. Before Walt Disney died of lung cancer in 1966, the last words he wrote on a piece of paper were Kurt Russell. At the time, Kurt Russell was a child actor who had just signed a contract with the studio. To this day, it remains a mystery what Disney meant when he wrote his name. Mariah Carey and collaborator Walter Afanasieff earn around $3.3 million per year in royalties from the song All I Want for Christmas Is You. 26 years after its release in 1994, the song remained by far one of the most popular songs on Spotify, accounting for 20% of the 13 most popular Christmas songs streamed repeatedly. According to Dr. Richard Miller, a professor of pathology at the University of Michigan, 100-year-old people are more common than 4-year-old mice. A 4-year-old mouse is equivalent to a human who is about 136 years old. While Catherine Bach portrayed Daisy Duke on The Dukes of Hazzard, her legs were insured for $1 million. White pieces in chess have between a 52 and 56% chance of winning against black pieces because of the first move advantage. Martha, the first wife of singer Willie Nelson, once sewed him into the bedsheets and hit him with a broom handle. In 2012, a Burger King employee anonymously posted a picture on the website 4chan showing himself standing on top of lettuce, with the caption claiming it was the lettuce people were eating at Burger King. Internet users immediately tracked him down and reported him to local news outlets. He was quickly fired. Isaac Newton used a large sewing needle to poke behind his own eyeball in an attempt to correct his vision. He considered the experiment a success and even wrote about it in detail in his journal, including instructions on how to perform the procedure. Servants in ancient Egypt were covered in honey to attract flies away from the pharaoh. Buddy the Elf's loud burp in the movie Elf was actually real and was performed by voice actor Maurice LaMarche. Maurice also voiced Kif in the animated series Futurama. If your dishwasher is 10 years old or older, it probably has a self-cleaning filter. However, if it is a newer model, you will most likely need to clean the filter manually on a regular basis. In 1958, the St. Louis Hawks were the last NBA team to win a championship without an African-American player on the roster. Serial killer Ed Kemper, who is portrayed in the Netflix series Mindhunter, used his time in prison to record hundreds of audiobooks for visually impaired people. Comedian Nathan Fielder's United States Permanent Resident card lists him as female. According to the website fatherly.com, more than half of American adults still have the stuffed animals from their childhood. Business was so good in San Francisco during the Great Depression that the Golden Gate Bridge and the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge were built at the same time. The term lesbian comes from the Greek poet Sappho, who was born on the island of Lesbos. Her works and cultural legacy have led to her name and place of origin being historically associated with female identity and culture. The gun that artist Vincent van Gogh used on himself was recently sold at auction for £144,000, or $182,000. Many enthusiasts consider it the most famous firearm in art history. Children of the Moken tribe in Thailand have the ability to see clearly underwater by constricting their pupils and changing the shape of their lenses. The Moken, also known as sea nomads, have spent generations living in close connection with the waters of the Andaman Sea. From a very young age, children spend much of their time swimming, diving, and searching for food beneath the surface, allowing them to develop exceptional visual abilities in that environment. Scientific studies have shown that they can detect details underwater with significantly greater accuracy than most children from other populations. For the 1978 film Superman, Marlon Brando was paid $3,700,000 and given 11.75% of the profits to play Superman's father, Jor-El. He worked for only 13 days and received less than 21 minutes of screen time. By comparison, Christopher Reeve was paid $250,000 to play Superman. Loons are unable to walk because of the position of their legs. They sometimes mistake wet pavement for bodies of water and become stranded because they need a stretch of open water to take flight. Their legs are positioned far back on their bodies, an adaptation that makes them excellent divers and swimmers but greatly limits their mobility on land. These birds can remain underwater for several minutes while chasing fish. They are also famous for their distinctive, haunting calls, which are often heard on northern North American lakes and have frequently been used in films and documentaries to represent wild and remote landscapes. Although sea otters search for food alone, they form floating groups by holding on to one another. The largest group ever observed contained more than 2,000 sea otters. These groups, known as rafts, help prevent the animals from drifting apart while resting in the ocean. They often wrap themselves in kelp forests to stay in place and avoid being carried away by currents. Sea otters have one of the densest coats in the animal kingdom, with hundreds of thousands of hairs per square inch, an essential adaptation because they lack the thick layer of blubber found in many other marine species. The small town of Severance, Colorado had a ban on snowball fights until a 9-year-old boy named Dane Best persuaded the town board to lift the ban in 2018. Honeybees typically sleep between 5 and 8 hours a day, and some even hold on to one another's legs while sleeping. During these rest periods, their activity decreases significantly, and their antennae move less frequently. Sleep is important because it helps them process information related to navigation and locating food sources. Studies have shown that sleep-deprived bees have greater difficulty accurately communicating the location of flowers through their famous waggle dance. Inside hives, it is common to see small groups resting together, especially at night when much of the foraging activity temporarily stops. Even though 80% of the world's vanilla is produced in Madagascar, the plant originally came from Mexico. The ancient Maya cultivated it on the Yucatan Peninsula. For centuries, vanilla was considered an extremely valuable product and was used to flavor cocoa beverages consumed by Mesoamerican civilizations. The plant belongs to the orchid family and produces flowers that remain open for only a short time, making its cultivation especially labor-intensive. In many producing regions, the flowers must be pollinated by hand, one by one, a process that requires great skill and contributes to natural vanilla being one of the most expensive spices in the world. The first written recipe for guacamole in the English language came from a pirate named William Dampier in the 17th century. According to Dr. Philip Stevens of Durham University, at least 500 humans would be needed to repopulate Earth after a mass extinction event in order to avoid inbreeding. The surgical term caesarean originated in ancient Rome after reports claimed that Julius Caesar was removed from his mother at birth. The Chicago Sun-Times newspaper purchased a rundown bar in 1977 and named it the Mirage. They used the bar to investigate an intricate network of bribery and corruption involving city officials and politicians. The team of journalists gathered so much information that they published a 25-part series 1 year later, in 1978. Coca-Cola has been the longest-running sponsor of the Olympic Games since first appearing at the 1928 Amsterdam Olympics. The company began its Olympic relationship by providing beverages to athletes and spectators, and over the decades became one of the longest-lasting commercial partnerships in sports history. Throughout numerous Olympic Games held across different continents, the brand has participated in advertising campaigns, fan programs, and promotional activities connected to the event. Norway has introduced digital driver's licenses that people can download through an application on their smartphones. In 2014, the energy drink company Red Bull had to compensate customers who purchased its beverages between 2002 and 2014 after an American man named Benjamin Carruthers sued the company. He claimed that the slogan, "Red Bull gives you wings," was misleading, and that a cup of coffee contained more caffeine than the company's energy drink. Actor Phil Lamar, who portrayed Marvin in the film Pulp Fiction, also provided the voice of Hermes in Futurama. A tribe in Tanzania known as the Haya has been forging steel for nearly 2,000 years. According to archaeologist Peter Schmidt, he discovered that village elders were able to build furnaces from mud and grass. When he investigated the area further, he found 13 additional furnaces with similar designs that carbon dating revealed to be around 2,000 years old. Target Corporation in Minnesota has a state-of-the-art forensic laboratory that not only catches shoplifters, but also assists law enforcement agencies with investigations free of charge. Emma Morano was the last known living person on Earth, born in the 1800s, as well as the world's oldest living person at the time of her death in 2017. She was born in 1899 and lived across 3 different centuries, witnessing historical events that spanned from the era of horse-drawn carriages to the age of smartphones. She was also one of the last verified people who had lived before the beginning of the 20th century. She reached the age of 117 years in more than 4 months, becoming one of the longest-lived people ever recorded. Dragonflies are capable of eating their own body weight in food in about 30 minutes. They are extraordinarily efficient predators and catch their prey in midair using their spiny legs like a net. Their diet consists mainly of mosquitoes, flies, and other small insects, making them natural allies in pest control. In addition, they possess one of the most advanced visual systems in the animal kingdom, with compound eyes that allow them to detect movement in nearly every direction. Studies have shown that their success rates when capturing prey can exceed 90%, one of the highest ever recorded among predators. Ben Stiller came up with the idea for the comedy film Tropic Thunder while working on the set of Empire of the Sun in 1987 and listening to actors describe their boot camp experiences as if they had actually gone to war. Wild Bill Hickok usually sat with his back against the wall in establishments so he could see the entrance. One night, while playing poker, the only available seat at the table had its back to the entrance. He asked another player to switch seats twice, but the man refused. When Hickok eventually sat in that seat, a disgruntled gambler from a previous night entered the saloon and ended Hickok's life. The annual pillow fight at the United States Military Academy at West Point was banned after 30 first-year cadets were injured during one incident. 24 of them were even diagnosed with concussions. A man in Florida died because of his pet cassowary when the large, flightless bird attacked him after he fell down. Cassowaries are considered among the most dangerous birds in the world because of their powerful legs and the long, sharp claws they possess on each foot. Native to the rainforests of Australia, New Guinea, and nearby islands, they can reach surprising speeds when running and are excellent jumpers. Although they usually avoid people in the wild, they can become aggressive when they feel threatened or when they have become accustomed to receiving food from humans. Candido Enzo Jacuzzi was an Italian immigrant in the United States who invented the jacuzzi whirlpool bath to help his 15-month-old son, Kenny Jacuzzi, who was born with rheumatoid arthritis. Eminem had a high score of 465,800 in the Donkey Kong arcade game in 2010. This would have placed him among the top 30 scores in the world at the time. Barbara Newhall Follett was an American child prodigy and novelist of the early 20th century. Her first novel was published in 1927 when she was only 12 years old, and her second novel was published just 2 years later when she was 14. She married an unfaithful man as an adult and fell into a deep depression. In 1939, at the age of 25, she disappeared and was never seen again. Crickets are capable of chewing through and damaging the screens on your windows, but grasshoppers are actually the bigger problem when it comes to this issue. During major population outbreaks, grasshoppers can cause considerable damage to crops, gardens, and vegetation because of their enormous appetite. Some species are capable of consuming an amount of food each day equal to a significant portion of their own body weight. The most severe infestations recorded in history have covered hundreds of square miles and involved billions of individuals, even darkening the sky as they passed and affecting entire communities. Cats enjoy lying in the sunlight while taking a nap because it helps them conserve energy and burn fewer calories, maintaining their internal body temperature. They also have a higher body temperature than humans, around 101.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Thanks to this adaptation, they often seek out warm places such as sunny windows, blankets, rooftops, or surfaces that retain heat for hours. Cats can sleep between 12 and 16 hours a day, and some even more, especially as they age. Although they may appear deeply asleep, they often remain in a light resting state that allows them to react quickly to any sound or movement. The company known for its glass jars also has an aerospace division where it develops spacecraft and payloads. The company was founded in 1880 and employs more than 17,500 people worldwide. There were many recorded cases of large squirrel migrations across the United States during the 1800s. In southeastern Wisconsin in 1842, 500 million gray squirrels passed through the area over a 4-week period. Witnesses at the time described uninterrupted streams of animals crossing fields, rivers, and forests, sometimes darkening portions of the landscape. These massive movements were possible because much of eastern North America was covered by vast, continuous forests that provided food and shelter. Some squirrels were even seen swimming long distances to continue their journey. Backgammon is one of the oldest board games in history, dating back to 3000 BC in ancient Persia. Early versions of very similar games have also been found in archaeological excavations throughout Mesopotamia and other regions of the Near East. Over thousands of years, merchants, soldiers, and travelers helped spread it across Asia, Africa, and Europe, where it developed different rules and variations. The use of dice to combine strategy and chance has remained virtually unchanged since ancient times, making it one of the few games that remains popular after several millennia. The term lunatic comes from the Latin word lunaticus, which referred to madness and epilepsy because mental illnesses were believed to be caused by the position of the moon. Aristotle and Pliny the Elder claimed that the full moon affected people with bipolar disorder. Until around the 1700s, the moon was believed to be one of the causes of fevers, rheumatism, and other illnesses. Japan has the highest ratio of vending machines per person in the world. Since there are 5.5 million vending machines in the country, there is one machine for every 23 people. These machines are part of everyday Japanese life and can be found at train stations, on residential streets, in rural areas, and even near mountain trails. In addition to beverages and snacks, some sell unusual products such as umbrellas, flowers, fresh eggs, ramen, and collectible items. Their success is partly attributed to low levels of vandalism, high population density, and an infrastructure that allows frequent restocking, enabling them to operate efficiently year-round. The maximum power output a horse can generate is 15 horsepower. The maximum output a human being can produce is a little more than 1 horsepower. Horses can reach that tremendous power for very short intervals, especially when starting or performing explosive efforts. In equestrian competitions and racing events, their musculature allows them to generate impressive force within seconds. Elite athletes, meanwhile, can temporarily exceed 1 horsepower during a sprint or maximum effort exertion, although only for brief moments. The sustained power output of an average person is usually much lower, generally comparable to that of a powerful household light bulb. In 2014, attendees at the Food Safety Summit in Baltimore, Maryland, became ill from contaminated chicken that was served to them. The incident affected dozens of people, including officials, public health experts, and food industry representatives attending the event. Subsequent investigations pointed to possible salmonella contamination, one of the most common causes of foodborne illness. Every year, millions of people around the world suffer from foodborne infections, which is why the proper handling of meat and poultry remains one of the top priorities of food safety agencies. Aluminum recovered from the World Trade Center debris after September 11th was used as cable shields for NASA's Mars rovers, Spirit and Opportunity. The purpose was to honor the victims of that tragic day. Rapper Tupac Amaru Shakur was named after Tupac Amaru II, who led the Andean uprising against the Spanish in Peru during the 18th century. He became a legendary figure during the Peruvian struggle for independence, but was later executed by the Spanish after being defeated and captured. Forest landowners in Oregon are required to replant trees after a timber harvest. They plant around 40 million new trees every year. The state has one of the most important forestry industries in the United States, and much of the harvested land becomes covered with vegetation again within a few years thanks to these reforestation programs. Among the most common species planted are Douglas fir, western hemlock, and ponderosa pine. Some forest nurseries produce millions of seedlings each season to meet reforestation demand across the state. According to the Journal of Forensic Sciences, researchers documented a deer feeding on a human being for the first time. It may have been consuming the remains because of a deficiency in minerals such as phosphorus, salt, and calcium. According to Karen Shapiro of the University of California, Davis, flushing cat litter down the toilet could actually kill sea otters through toxoplasmosis. Cats are the only known hosts of the parasite, and when their waste is flushed away, snails feed on it, and, in turn, sea otters eat the snails. The Central Intelligence Agency developed a heart attack gun that fired a small dart capable of penetrating clothing. The dart disintegrated upon impact, leaving only a tiny red mark on the skin before the poison entered the bloodstream. An autopsy would reportedly show that the victim had simply died of a heart attack. The unfrosted varieties of Pop-Tarts, such as strawberry, blueberry, and brown sugar cinnamon, are considered vegan, but the frosted Pop-Tarts are not because they contain dairy products. Pop-Tarts also had their own breakfast cereal in the early 1990s called Pop-Tart Crunch. The pink Chanel suit worn by Jackie Kennedy during the assassination of John F. Kennedy is kept locked away in the National Archives and will not be displayed to the public until at least the year 2103. At that time, members of the Kennedy family will renegotiate the matter. The mayor of Philadelphia had to issue a statement declaring it illegal to fill a dumpster with water and use it as a swimming pool after people began opening fire hydrants to fill them during the summer months. Rapper LL Cool J is one of the 48 current members of the Smithsonian Institution's Board of Regents. Trick-or-treating on Halloween was suspended during World War II because of sugar rationing. The shortage affected numerous consumer products in the United States, so many families reduced or modified their traditional celebrations. When rationing ended, the custom quickly regained popularity thanks to the growth of the suburbs and the increase in the child population during the post-war era. By the 1950s, trick-or-treating had already become one of Halloween's most recognizable traditions, also helping drive the growth of the candy and chocolate industry. Jellyfish are classified as plankton because they cannot swim against ocean currents. Although they can propel themselves through rhythmic contractions of their bodies, ocean currents are usually much stronger than their ability to move independently. Some species travel enormous distances carried by the oceans and can suddenly appear in large numbers when conditions are favorable. Jellyfish have existed for hundreds of millions of years, long before dinosaurs, and have survived numerous environmental changes throughout Earth's history. Their simple and efficient anatomy has allowed them to thrive in seas around the world, from tropical waters to polar regions. Between 33,000 and 55,000 Canadian men served in the Union Army, while a few hundred served in the Confederate Army during the American Civil War. At least 29 Canadian men received the Medal of Honor during and after the American Civil War. Canada refused to return approximately 15,000 Americans who deserted or evaded military service. Mr. Bean's first name is actually Mr. This means his full name is Mr. Bean. During its early years of operation, the Burj Khalifa skyscraper in Dubai relied in part on tanker trucks to transport its wastewater, because the area's sanitation infrastructure was still under development. Over time, the expansion of the sewer network allowed the building to be integrated into more modern and efficient treatment systems. It is officially forbidden to wager the amounts of $69, $666, $1,488, or $14.88 on the television game show Jeopardy! For more than 350 years, the tiny Pheasant Island has alternated between France and Spain every 6 months. It is located in the Bidasoa River, which also serves as the border between the two nations. With only a few thousand square feet of surface area and no permanent residents, it is considered one of the oldest territorial condominiums in the world, a form of shared sovereignty between two countries. The island has significant historical value because diplomatic negotiations were held there that culminated in agreements between the French and Spanish crowns during the 17th century. Today, it remains closed to the public most of the time and is administered alternately by authorities from both countries, according to the corresponding period. American General George Patton competed in the first modern pentathlon in history during the 1912 Summer Olympics. He finished in fifth place while creating controversy in the pistol shooting event. He claimed he was such a skilled marksman that one of his bullets passed through another of his holes in the target. For more than 3,000 years, chocolate existed only in liquid form until Joseph Fry learned how to make it solid in 1847. His innovation made it possible to create a moldable paste that could be turned into chocolate bars, forever changing the way people consumed chocolate. Before that, Mesoamerican cultures and later Europeans primarily enjoyed it as a beverage. The development of solid chocolate paved the way for the modern candy and confectionery industry. Most of the ground cinnamon sold in international commerce is not actually true cinnamon. It comes from the related species known as cassia. Indonesia and China are responsible for producing most of the world's cinnamon. True cinnamon, also known as Ceylon cinnamon, is primarily grown in Sri Lanka and is valued for its milder and more delicate flavor. By comparison, cassia has a stronger taste and thicker bark, making it the variety most commonly found in supermarkets and processed foods. Both spices come from the inner bark of trees in the same genus, but they differ in aroma, texture, and chemical composition in ways that experts can easily identify. All Walt Disney World theme parks banned smoking on May 1, 2019. Visitors must smoke outside the parks in designated areas. Believe it or not, sand is one of the most heavily consumed resources on the planet, and we are actually beginning to run short of it, according to author Vince Beiser. Much of the demand comes from construction, since sand is an essential component of concrete, asphalt, and many other materials used in buildings, roads, and bridges. Not all sand is suitable for these purposes. For example, desert sand is often too smooth and rounded because of wind erosion. Because of the enormous demand for this resource, some countries have had to strictly regulate extraction from rivers and coastlines to reduce environmental damage and ecosystem erosion. Giraffes and oxen are kosher animals, but camels are not. According to traditional Jewish dietary laws, land mammals must meet two requirements to be considered kosher. They must have split hooves and chew their cud. Oxen and giraffes meet both conditions, while camels meet only one. Although the giraffe is technically considered kosher, it is almost never eaten and is not a regular part of the diet. After the release of the film The Taking of Pelham 123 in 1974, the New York City Transit Authority decided that no train would depart from Pelham Bay Park at 1:23. This is a rule that subway dispatchers still follow today. Since 1968, Snoopy from the Peanuts comic strip has been NASA's official safety mascot. Every mission since then has carried a silver Snoopy aboard, and once it returns to Earth, it is awarded to a civilian who helped keep astronauts safe. In 1977, stunt performer Evel Knievel attempted to hit a man with a baseball bat because the man wrote a book about him and portrayed him as an immoral person. In 1866, the entire state of Mississippi spent more than half of its total budget on artificial limbs. This extraordinary situation was a direct consequence of the American Civil War, which left thousands of veterans with amputations and other severe injuries. During the years following the conflict, several southern states implemented special programs to provide prosthetic limbs to former soldiers attempting to rebuild their lives. The prosthetics of the era were much simpler than modern versions, and were usually made from wood, leather, and metal components. The Germans began building fighter aircraft primarily out of wood toward the end of World War II because metals were in short supply. Using wood allowed them to conserve strategic materials such as aluminum for other military purposes and take advantage of resources that were still available. Some models incorporated plywood and special adhesives to form important parts of the structure. In addition to reducing dependence on scarce metals, this decision allowed factories with experience in carpentry and furniture manufacturing to participate in aircraft production. According to research published in Animal Cognition, rats may possess empathy. During one experiment, they were given a choice between a piece of chocolate and saving one of their companions from drowning, and they chose to save the rat in danger. This finding adds to other studies suggesting that rats are socially complex animals capable of recognizing familiar individuals and responding to the emotional state of other members of their group. They have also been observed cooperating to obtain rewards and learning from one another through observation. Their intelligence and social behavior are among the reasons they have been used for decades in research on memory, learning, and decision-making. 26 states in the United States do not require employers to provide breaks for their employees. This means that, in many jurisdictions, breaks during the workday depend on company policies or specific agreements between employers and workers. Labor regulations vary considerably from one state to another, so some require rest periods and meal breaks under certain conditions, while others do not have similar requirements. As a result, two people performing nearly identical jobs may have different rights depending on the state where they work, making American labor law one of the most diverse at the state level. The word decal comes from decalcomania, the technique used to transfer engravings and printed designs onto ceramics and other materials. Disney Chief Executive Officer Bob Iger stated that the company originally planned to acquire Twitter in 2016, but backed out of the deal because the social media platform did not feel like Disney to him. Actor Cary Grant took LSD an estimated 100 times from 1958 to 1961 in search of inner peace and meaning. He said the result of those sessions was a rebirth. After winning the Nobel Prize in 1922, the Carlsberg Brewery gifted physicist Niels Bohr a house with a pipeline connected to the neighboring brewery, providing him with free beer for life. In 1937, the Antarctic Snow Cruiser was designed to assist with transportation during the United States Antarctic Service Expedition from 1939 to 1941. However, its treadless tires caused it to lose traction on snow, rendering it essentially useless. The team eventually abandoned the vehicle when they returned to the United States to focus on the war effort, but it was rediscovered later in 1946. Desalinating ocean water can cost between $1 and $2 per cubic yard, while purifying fresh water from a river or aquifer costs only between 10 and 20 cents. The difference is mainly due to the large amount of energy required to remove salt and other dissolved minerals from seawater. Despite its higher cost, desalination has become a crucial source of drinking water in arid regions where freshwater resources are limited. Countries such as Saudi Arabia and Israel produce a significant portion of their water supply through this process. Modern desalination plants can generate hundreds of millions of gallons of drinking water per day, supplying entire cities located in areas with scarce rainfall. In 2015, Godzilla became a Japanese citizen and was even appointed as a tourism ambassador for Japan. The designation was part of a promotional campaign intended to attract visitors and highlight one of the most recognizable characters in Japanese popular culture. Godzilla is considered a true national icon and has starred in dozens of films since debuting in 1954. Over the decades, the character evolved from a metaphor connected to the nuclear age into a global symbol of giant monster cinema. In 2017, Iceland became concerned about an increase in murders because there were 4 in the country, which was more than double its typical number. Iceland is often ranked among the countries with the lowest homicide rates in the world, so even small changes in the number of cases can generate significant public and media attention. Its relatively small population makes statistical changes especially noticeable from year to year. The country is also known for its high levels of social trust, low rates of violent crime, and a police force that traditionally operates without routinely carrying firearms during most of its daily duties. During the Middle Ages in Europe, people caught selling fake saffron could be executed by law. Saffron was one of the most valuable spices in the world and, at times, was worth its weight in gold because of the enormous number of flowers required to produce small quantities of it. It was highly prized for use in cooking, medicine, and dye production. Because of its great value, adulteration and counterfeiting became frequent problems, leading some cities and regions to impose extremely severe punishments. In 2011, 2 movies were released 6 months apart that had exactly the same plot, running time, and ending. They were the romantic comedies No Strings Attached, starring Ashton Kutcher and Natalie Portman, and Friends with Benefits, starring Mila Kunis and Justin Timberlake. In addition, both movies earned approximately the same amount of money at the box office. Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd President of the United States, raised a special type of goose to produce his writing quills. Because he was right-handed, he used only the 5 feathers from the tip of the left wing. Left-handed people would use the 5 feathers from the tip of the right wing. He then buried the feathers in hot, dry sand to harden them before cutting them into points. Our general knowledge of what potassium cyanide tastes like comes from a note written by a man to physicians. He claimed that it tasted acidic and that it burned his tongue. Direct accounts involving extremely toxic substances are very rare, So some of the best-known historical records come from medical reports, forensic documents, and observations made during scientific investigations. Interestingly, although many people associate cyanide with the smell of bitter almonds, not everyone can detect it. Scientists have discovered that the ability to perceive that odor is linked to genetic factors, meaning a significant portion of the population cannot detect it at all. Disney World has a hotel that is open exclusively to members of the United States military and their families. It is called Shades of Green. Viggo Mortensen, the actor from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, speaks Danish, English, French, and Spanish fluently. He also has conversational proficiency in Italian, understands Norwegian and Swedish, and even has some knowledge of Catalan. Ramen noodles are vegetarian, but their seasoning packets generally are not. However, one brand that is completely vegetarian is Oriental Flavor Top Ramen. The birds used in Alfred Hitchcock's horror film, The Birds, were fed a mixture of wheat and whiskey so they would remain in one place for long periods of time. In addition, one alternate ending for the film would have featured a shot of the Golden Gate Bridge completely covered with birds. Money laundering was not a crime in the United States until 1986, after the Money Laundering Control Act of 1986 was passed. During the New York City draft riots of 1863, Leonard Jerome, who was Winston Churchill's grandfather, defended the New York Times office building with a Gatling gun. King Charles II of England's favorite dish was a serving of eggs with ambergris, the substance produced in the digestive system of a sperm whale. Painter and skiing enthusiast James Niehues has hand-painted ski maps for more than 200 ski resorts since 1987. An estimated 3% of the world's 1940 population perished during World War II. It was the deadliest conflict in human history. According to the publication 24/7 Wall Street, the state of Wisconsin is home to 9 of the 20 cities with the highest alcohol consumption in the United States. A common shrew must eat up to twice its body weight in food every day to stay alive. In fact, it can starve to death if it goes without food for only a few hours. Its metabolism is among the fastest in the animal kingdom, forcing it to spend much of the day hunting insects, worms, and other small invertebrates. Some species remain active day and night in very short cycles of rest and feeding. Despite their tiny size, they are fierce and surprisingly aggressive predators capable of attacking prey close to their own size. Their pace of life is so intense that every hour without food represents a significant loss of energy for their bodies. Santana's first album had not even been released when the band performed at the Woodstock Festival in 1969. Their debut album was released later that same month. Queen Elizabeth ate a slice of chocolate biscuit cake every day and had it transported with her when she traveled. Former royal chef Darren McGrady said that she would eat a small slice each day until eventually only a tiny piece remained, but it still had to be sent to her because she wanted to finish the entire cake. Nigeria drinks more Guinness beer than Ireland and is the second largest Guinness market in the world. Actor Peter Falk had his right eye surgically removed at the age of 3 because of cancer and was fitted with a glass eye. His trademark squint came from the side of his face with the glass eye. Comedian Phil Hartman was originally a graphic designer who earned his degree from California State University Northridge in 1974. Before joining Saturday Night Live, he designed album covers for several rock and roll bands. Tesla is one of the best-selling automobile brands in Norway, a country that is a global leader in the adoption of electric vehicles. Today, the vast majority of new cars sold in the country are fully electric, a transformation driven by government incentives, widely available charging infrastructure, and a strong consumer preference for sustainable transportation. In 1990, an elderly woman was hospitalized after developing lipoid pneumonia from inhalation after spraying herself with WD-40 in an attempt to relieve her rheumatism. Apparently, this was a common practice among older people. Because of a promotion run by competing breweries in Cameroon in 2005, beer bottle caps were used as a form of currency. The companies printed prizes and rewards underneath the caps, giving some of them immediate value among consumers. In certain places, people began exchanging them for goods and services, or using them to settle small debts because they could be redeemed for drinks, cash, or other prizes. The phenomenon spread so quickly that the caps circulated from hand to hand like a form of exchange token. Author Jules Verne is the second most translated author in history, and his writings are available in approximately 150 languages. However, some of his translations contain errors, such as measurements being converted incorrectly. William Shakespeare ranks third on the list, and Agatha Christie holds first place with the world record. Director George Lucas first pitched the concept for the blockbuster film Raiders of the Lost Ark to his friend Steven Spielberg while they were building a sand castle at the Mauna Kea Beach Hotel in Hawaii. Originally, people believed that mammoths burrowed like moles because their remains were always discovered underground. Before the development of modern paleontology, many people tried to explain fossils using the observations and beliefs of their time. Since enormous mammoth bones were found buried and complete specimens were rarely discovered on the surface, curious theories emerged about giant creatures that lived underground and died when exposed to sunlight. In different parts of Europe and Asia, these remains were also mistaken for the bones of giants, dragons, or other legendary beings. It was not until centuries later that scientists understood they belonged to ancient relatives of elephants that once inhabited vast regions of the northern hemisphere. Most elevators make one chime when going up and two chimes when going down. This system was designed primarily to help people with visual impairments identify the elevator's direction before entering. Hall of Fame Major League Baseball pitcher Nolan Ryan played from 1966 to 1993. He debuted at the age of 19 and retired at 46. Musician Bob Dylan has maintained an extraordinarily consistent live performance schedule since the late 1980s. This extended run of concerts became popularly known as the Never-Ending Tour. Over the decades, he has performed thousands of shows around the world, establishing himself as one of the most active performers in the history of popular music. According to a 2017 article in Science Advances, only 9% of the plastic produced worldwide is recycled. Comedian Steve Martin has won more awards for playing the banjo and performing bluegrass music than for comedy. The comedy rock band Tenacious D, consisting of Jack Black and Kyle Gass, got its name from the term tenacious defense. The phrase was frequently used by sports broadcaster Marv Albert during NBA games. Antarctica was discovered on November 17, 1820, which was only 39 years after the discovery of the planet Uranus. The comparison is surprising because we tend to imagine that all continents were known long before the planets of the solar system. However, the extreme conditions of the Southern Ocean, the enormous ice fields, and the remoteness of the continent made exploration extremely difficult. For centuries, maps showed a hypothetical southern landmass without conclusive proof of its existence. Today, Antarctica is the coldest, windiest, and driest continent on Earth, and it contains an enormous amount of the planet's frozen freshwater beneath its vast ice sheet. Each year, between 40,000 and 45,000 doctorates are awarded in the United States. However, diploma mills award more than 50,000 fake doctorates every year. This means that more than half of the people who claim to have a doctorate possess a fraudulent one. In 2017, 5 nurses in Denver were suspended for discussing and admiring certain parts of a deceased patient's body. The incident sparked an internal investigation and received widespread media coverage because of concerns about professional ethics and respect for patients. Alaska, Arizona, Utah, Indiana, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Tennessee have official state firearms. These designations typically recognize models that played an important role in the history, culture, or development of each state. In many cases, they are firearms associated with historical events, westward expansion, or local manufacturing. The practice is similar to naming official state birds, flowers, or minerals. Crocodiles are capable of surviving without food for up to 3 years because they are extremely efficient at storing energy in their bodies. Their metabolism is much slower than that of mammals, allowing them to consume energy at a greatly reduced rate during long periods of scarcity. After a large meal, they can go weeks or even months without feeding again. They also conserve energy by remaining motionless for much of the day and carefully regulating their physical activity. This ability has helped crocodilians survive for millions of years, making them some of the oldest large predators still alive today. Antoine Auguste Parmentier was responsible for popularizing potatoes in France during the late 1700s. He placed guards around his potato fields during the day to make it appear that he was protecting something valuable, then left the fields unattended at night so people could steal the potatoes and enjoy them. He also invented potato recipes, founded a baking school, and studied methods of food refrigeration. Morgan's Wonderland in San Antonio, Texas, is the first major theme park created for people with special needs. A former real estate developer named Gordon Hartman sold his business and opened the park for his daughter. China has an award known as the Confucius Peace Prize, created by a private organization as an alternative to the Nobel Peace Prize. The award has been presented to various international figures and often attracts media attention because of its unconventional selections and its association with the philosophy of Confucius. The Japanese toilet company Toto created a green motorcycle called the Toilet Bike Neo that runs on biogas produced from livestock waste. The seat of the three-wheeled motorcycle is a toilet, and it has a 250 cubic centimeter engine. There are currently no plans to produce the Toilet Bike Neo commercially. Johnny Depp turned down the lead role in the 1997 thriller Face/Off because he thought it would be a movie about hockey. The rising star would have appeared alongside Nicolas Cage, but the role ultimately went to John Travolta. German scientist Angela Kohler developed a technique to obtain caviar without killing the fish, in which the eggs are extracted by massaging the sturgeon and the fish survives for another day. This could make caviar less expensive for consumers. There are air-purifying plants that help remove pollutants from indoor spaces. Some species can absorb certain compounds from the air through their leaves and roots, while also helping maintain comfortable humidity levels indoors. Among the best known are pothos, snake plants, and peace lilies, which are commonly used in homes and offices because they are hardy and easy to care for. Although a single plant has only a limited effect in large rooms, studies have shown that indoor vegetation can help create more pleasant environments and provide psychological benefits, such as increased well-being and reduced everyday stress. Legendary actors Henry Fonda and James Stewart were best friends despite having opposite political views. Fonda was a Democrat while Stewart was a Republican. And one night, they had a heated argument. They decided never to discuss politics again and instead spent their time playing practical jokes on each other and building model airplanes. Adolf Hitler was a major fan of movies and watched them frequently. He also watched films in different languages and sometimes simply had their plots explained to him. On occasion, he stayed awake all night until 10 in the morning watching movies. The ancient Polynesians who settled on Maui had no pottery at all because the Hawaiian island lacked clay. Instead of making ceramic containers, they developed other solutions using the resources available on the islands, such as wood, stone, plant fibers, and dried gourds. These communities were extraordinarily skilled navigators and transported plants, animals, and essential knowledge with them to establish sustainable settlements in remote areas of the Pacific Ocean. Since the 1950s, at least 4 actors who portrayed the Marlboro Man in advertising campaigns have died from smoking-related illnesses. This coincidence attracted enormous media attention and helped make the character a frequently cited example in discussions about the risks of cigarette smoking. The Marlboro Man was one of the most recognizable advertising figures of the 20th century, representing an image of independence, adventure, and outdoor living. For decades, he appeared on billboards, in magazines, and in international campaigns, becoming one of the most famous commercial symbols in history. According to sociologist Reuben J. Thomas of the University of New Mexico, people who participate in online dating are more likely to settle down with someone of a different race, religion, social class, or educational background. 33 actors from across all Star Trek series have appeared in the animated television show Gargoyles, which aired from 1994 to 1997. The animated series also employed 5 Star Trek writers as well as 2 artists. There were 54 books published in the popular children's series Animorphs between June of 1996 and May of 2001. They were written by Catherine Applegate and her husband, Michael Grant. They wrote together under the name K.A. Applegate. Filmmaker Ron Howard still owns the first car he ever bought, a 1970 Volkswagen Beetle. His brother-in-law found it after Howard had sold it and replaced the engine. He later sent the Beetle back to Howard, and it ended up being the car Howard used while courting his wife. Deep Springs College is a 2-year college for men located on a cattle ranch outside Death Valley. Only 15 students are admitted each year, and the college provides free tuition, room, and board. However, students are required to work 20 hours a week on the ranch. Some public places are beginning to install blue lights in their restrooms to combat drug use. Blue lights help with this issue because they make it more difficult for drug users to locate their veins. There are only 7 genes in a cat's DNA that determine the pattern and color of its coat. From different combinations and variations of these genes, an enormous variety of colors, spots, stripes, and patterns can emerge. For example, tabby, tortoiseshell, bicolor, and color point patterns have different genetic foundations that interact with one another in complex ways. Actor Keanu Reeves was cared for by Alice Cooper when he was a child, while his mother worked in costume design. Reeves said he does not remember much about the experience, except that there was fake poop in the refrigerator. Kukai was an infamous prison in Thailand during the 19th century, whose name translated to bird droppings prison. The first floor housed prisoners, while the second floor contained birds. According to historical accounts, conditions were extremely unpleasant for those held there, and this design was part of the harsh measures used in the prison. In 2016, the closest star to us, Proxima Centauri, produced a stellar flare so powerful that it was visible from Earth. Scientists concluded that planets orbiting the star have very little chance of being habitable and are likely lifeless, rocky worlds. Mountain Dew was originally developed as a whiskey mixer in the 1940s by Tennessee bottlers Barney and Allie Hartman. At the time, the brothers were looking for a soft drink with a flavor that would pair well with other popular beverages in the region. The name Mountain Dew came from a colloquial expression used in the Appalachian Mountains to refer to homemade liquor. The earliest bottles featured illustrations inspired by rural Tennessee culture, very different from the brand's modern image. More than 100 marijuana plants sprouted on the playing field of Anaheim Stadium in 1976 following a concert by The Who. The seeds were believed to have been dropped by concertgoers and remained unnoticed until they began growing weeks later. Stadium groundskeepers were surprised to discover the plants growing among the grass. Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Andy Dalton and his wife Jordan rent a hotel every year to allow parents of children with disabilities to enjoy a paid date night. Before World War II, mutton was a common dish in the United States. Soldiers on the battlefield ate it canned so frequently that they grew tired of it, and by the time they returned home, many never wanted to see it again. This contributed to the dish's decline. City Park in New Orleans, Louisiana, is home to the largest collection of mature southern live oak trees in the world, and some are more than 600 years old. Many of these giants began growing centuries before the founding of the United States and have survived hurricanes, floods, and numerous changes throughout the city. Their enormous branches extend horizontally over great distances, creating natural tunnels of shade that have become one of New Orleans' most iconic landscapes. Some specimens are so large that their canopies cover areas comparable to the size of several homes combined. According to the visual cliff study conducted by Eleanor J. Gibson and Richard D. Walk, humans are born with only two innate fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. The study was conducted using infants in simulated environments. In 18th century gambling houses in England, there was an employee whose only job was to swallow the dice if police raided the establishment. These individuals were known for being prepared to destroy evidence quickly and help organizers avoid legal penalties. Illegal gambling was common in many British cities of the era, despite restrictions imposed by authorities. Underground establishments developed all kinds of methods to conceal cards, chips, dice, and betting records. A squirrel's brain begins to expand during the fall and winter seasons to help it remember where it buried all of its nuts. When spring arrives, it shrinks back to its normal size. Studies have found seasonal changes in brain regions associated with spatial memory, a critical skill for animals that store thousands of seeds and nuts in numerous hiding places. Some species can recover a large portion of their caches, even months after hiding them. Interestingly, forgotten nuts also benefit forests because many eventually germinate and grow into new trees. Originally, there was going to be a sequel to the thriller film Seven, titled 8, in which Morgan Freeman's character would be revealed to be a psychic. However, the studio said no, and the script was rewritten into the film Along Came a Spider, starring Anthony Hopkins. Sir Anthony Hopkins has been sober since December 29, 1975, after waking up in Arizona with no idea how he had gotten there. He also did not learn that he was autistic until he was diagnosed with the condition well into his 70s. Director John McTiernan, who directed films such as Predator, Die Hard, and The Hunt for Red October, was sentenced to 10 months in a federal prison camp in Yankton, South Dakota, for lying to the FBI. The famous YouTube video Keyboard Cat was originally filmed in 1984 and starred a cat named Fatso. Unfortunately, Fatso died in 1987, 20 years before the video became viral. According to the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, Americans collectively spend more than 70 billion hours behind the wheel of a vehicle each year. The Allied forces during World War II debated whether or not to bomb Auschwitz because the Nazis were establishing operations there. Alice Cooper's 1972 song, School's Out, was inspired by a question someone asked him. The question was, "What is the greatest 3 minutes of your life?" He replied that it was Christmas morning and the final 3 minutes of the school year. Cooper said that if they could capture those 3 minutes in a song, it would be something huge. Soldiers from the Nebraska Army National Guard used Chinook helicopters to drop hay bales to cattle stranded by flooding. Robert De Niro is actually more Irish than Italian. His ancestors escaped the Great Famine and came to the United States. The only time Leonard Nimoy appeared in public as Spock from Star Trek outside of television was at the Pear Blossom Festival in Medford, Oregon in 1967. He served as the Grand Marshal of the parade. Actor Will Friedle from the television series Boy Meets World suffers from an anxiety disorder that forced him to stop appearing on screen. He became a voice actor for animated shows such as Batman Beyond and Kim Possible. In 2015, he felt comfortable enough to appear on camera again for the series Girl Meets World. The purest water on Earth can be found in Puerto Williams, located in southern Chile at the tip of South America. The region is surrounded by some of the most pristine ecosystems on the planet and has an extremely low population density, significantly reducing environmental contamination. Research conducted in the area has found extremely low concentrations of particles and pollutants commonly present elsewhere in the world. Puerto Williams is also closer to Antarctica than to many major South American cities, and its landscapes include mountains, sub-Antarctic forests, and cold water channels that remain among the least disturbed environments affected by human activity. During ancient Roman times, every year on June 11th, free women would ceremonially strike a female slave and expel her from the community. Disneyland in Southern California has remained open nearly every day since its opening. However, throughout its history, it has had to close temporarily on a handful of occasions due to extraordinary events, including the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the Northridge earthquake, the September 11th attacks, and the pandemic. In 2012, the pizza chain Papa John's was sued for $250 million for sending unwanted text messages to people at all hours of the day. During mating, male sea otters bite the female's nose, which usually causes bleeding and leaves scars. In 344 BC, at the age of 12 or about 13, Alexander the Great made a wager with his father that he could tame a troublesome horse that no one else could approach. He not only tamed and calmed the horse, but also made it his longtime steed, riding it into battle for many years. He named the horse Bucephalus and loved it dearly. For the 1983 film Cujo, between 5 and 13 dogs were used during production, and all of their tails had to be tied with fishing line because they kept wagging them excitedly. When jazz legend Duke Ellington was a child, he and his friends played baseball outdoors. President Theodore Roosevelt would sometimes ride by on horseback and stop to watch Ellington and his friends play. In 2019, a Mexican judge granted 2 people legal authorization related to the personal use of cocaine. The decision was part of a judicial process concerning individual rights and the scope of drug control laws in Mexico. Beekeepers are strongly advised not to eat bananas before interacting with bees because the fruit contains a compound that triggers their alarm pheromone. If bees detect this scent on their beekeeper's breath, they can become extremely aggressive. Some experienced beekeepers claim that the smell of a ripe banana closely resembles the scent released by guard bees when they sense a threat near the hive. For this reason, in addition to avoiding certain foods, many also avoid wearing strong perfumes, scented lotions, or other heavily fragranced products before working with their colonies. There has not been a single day without a fatal car crash in the state of Texas since November 7, 2000. Due to its enormous population, extensive highway network, and large number of vehicles traveling daily, Texas records one of the highest traffic volumes in the United States. State authorities use this statistic to promote road safety campaigns related to seatbelt use, sober driving, and obeying speed limits. Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Benito Mussolini were all nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize at some point in their lives. In 1674, the Women's Petition Against Coffee in Great Britain proposed banning coffee for anyone under 60 years old because it was turning men into useless people. The word quarantine comes from the Italian word quarantena, which means 40. During the Black Death in the 14th century, ships were required to wait 40 days outside a port to prove they were not infected. In 1978, NBA center Clifford Ray used his enormous hand to reach into a dolphin's mouth and remove a bolt that it had swallowed. A veterinarian provided instructions over the telephone, and the procedure was successful. According to research from the University of Cambridge, children derive more satisfaction from their relationships with pets than from their relationships with their own brothers and sisters. They also tend to get along better with their pets than with their siblings. The Appalachian Mountains in the Scottish Highlands are part of the same ancient mountain range, known as the Central Pangaean Mountains. Hundreds of millions of years ago, before the present-day continents separated, these regions were connected as part of a massive landmass. Geologists have found remarkable similarities in the rocks, geological structures, and even some fossils on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. When the supercontinent began to break apart, the mountains were divided by the opening of the ocean, but they retained many of their original characteristics. Baseball Hall of Famer Tim Raines played with cocaine in his back pocket and would sometimes fall asleep in the dugout during games. London's walkie-talkie skyscraper had to be fitted with a sunshade because sunlight reflecting from one side of the building became so intense that it melted cars and even caused a fire in a nearby barbershop. In 1945, United States defense planners determined that 204 atomic bombs would be required to completely destroy the Soviet Union. Before the shot clock was introduced in the NBA, players would literally sit on the basketball and wait for time to expire when their team had the lead. The lowest attendance in Major League Baseball history occurred on April 29, 2015, during a game between the Baltimore Orioles and the Chicago White Sox. There was insufficient security for the game because of the civil unrest in Baltimore following the death of Freddie Gray. As a result, no spectators were allowed to attend, making it the first fanless game in history. The Orioles defeated the White Sox 8-2. During a television broadcast in 1966 about the life of the royal family, more than 30 million people watched the program. When the intermission arrived, so many people used the toilet in England that it caused a water shortage. The Beach Boys' song Never Learn Not to Love is a modified version of a song originally written by Charles Manson called Cease to Exist. Dolphins are actually born with whiskers that help them locate and sense their mother, but after about a week, they fall out during development. These small hairs appear around the snout during the earliest stages of life and serve as a reminder that dolphins descended from land mammals that possessed much more extensive body hair. Although the whiskers disappear shortly after birth in most species, some studies suggest that the associated follicles may retain a degree of sensitivity. Dolphins later rely on other extraordinarily developed senses, especially echolocation, which allows them to navigate, communicate, and detect objects using sound waves even in waters with very low visibility. When pop singer Lady Gaga was a freshman at New York University, she came across a Facebook group created by her classmates. The group was titled Stefani Germanata, You Will Never Be Famous. The page also contained hurtful comments calling her an attention seeker and asking who she thought she was. She left school a year later to focus entirely on her music career. The mother of actor, musician, and comedian Jack Black was Judith Love Cohen, who was an aerospace engineer and author. She worked on the Hubble Space Telescope and the Apollo space program. After retiring, Cohen founded a children's multimedia publishing company called Cascade Press. An unidentified man has remained incarcerated in a maximum security Canadian prison since 2013 because he refuses to identify himself. Pink pearl apples are red on the inside. They were developed in 1944 by a California breeder named Albert Etter. Their striking pink to red flesh comes from natural pigments called anthocyanins, the same compounds that give many berries and grapes their color. In addition to their unusual appearance, these apples are prized for their balanced, sweet, and tart flavor. When sliced or used in baking, they retain much of their color, making them especially popular for pies, ciders, and eye-catching desserts. Several varieties of red-fleshed apples exist, but pink pearl remains one of the most distinctive and well-known. In 2006, a railroad switchman named Truman Duncan fell from a moving train car and ended up underneath it. The steel wheels cut him in half, yet he remained conscious and was even calm enough to call emergency services. The Spix's macaw, the blue bird that inspired the main character in the animated movie Rio, was considered extinct in the wild for years, primarily because of habitat loss and illegal capture. Thanks to conservation and reintroduction programs, there are now individuals living once again in the wild in Brazil, although the species remains one of the most endangered birds in the world. There is a Hawaiian creation myth that says our universe was created from the destruction of a previous universe, and that the only survivors were octopuses. In some interpretations of ancient Hawaiian traditions, the octopus holds a special place as a creature associated with an era that existed before the current world. This story is part of a rich oral tradition, passed down through generations, in which the creation of the universe, the islands, and living beings is explained through complex genealogies and sacred narratives. Wristbands became popular during the 1930s, when tennis player Fred Perry wore gauze on his right wrist to keep sweat from reaching the handle of his racket and to wipe perspiration from his forehead. British comedian and author Tony Hawks became so frustrated with being confused for skateboarder Tony Hawk that he published a book on June 13, 2019, titled The Tony Hawk's Skateboarding Alphabet. The book contained nothing about skateboarding. Hawks has also written 6 other books. In 2014, the beard on the mask of the Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun fell off when workers removed the artifact from its display case for cleaning. They attempted to reattach the beard using epoxy resin, but it ended up misaligned. The mistake was finally noticed 1 year later, and a team of German and Egyptian experts reattached the mask using beeswax, a material that was used by the ancient Egyptians. The movie Top Gun was produced in collaboration with the Pentagon to improve the image of the United States Navy after the Vietnam War. The production received access to aircraft, aircraft carriers, and military personnel, resources that would have been extremely expensive to recreate independently. After the film's release in 1986, interest in naval aviation increased significantly, and recruiting centers reported greater interest from young people. Having a dream in which you are still in school, even though you graduated years ago, is one of the 10 most common dreams in the world. Many people report suddenly finding themselves taking an exam they never studied for, missing an important class, or discovering they are one course short of graduating. This type of dream appears in people of many different ages and professions, even decades after they have completed their education. Sleep researchers believe that school experiences leave especially lasting memories because they were associated for years with evaluations, responsibilities, and intense social situations. When the producers of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective were casting the lead role, they first approached actor Rick Moranis, but he turned it down. They then considered Judd Nelson, Alan Rickman, and even changing the role into a female lead for Whoopi Goldberg. Ultimately, they cast Jim Carrey based on his performances on the sketch comedy show In Living Color. The largest eagle that ever existed was the Haast's eagle, but it became extinct 500 to 600 years ago. Females were larger, and their wingspan could reach up to 10 feet wide. This impressive bird lived in New Zealand and was the primary predator of the enormous moa birds, which are also extinct today. Some females are estimated to have weighed more than 33 pounds, an extraordinary figure for a bird of prey. Its powerful talons were adapted to capture prey much larger than those hunted by most modern eagles. Scientists believe that the disappearance of the moa due to human activity also caused the rapid extinction of this gigantic eagle. A substantial number of African American men experience facial irritation caused by shaving. Because of this, Domino's Pizza was found to be in violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 for enforcing a no-beard policy for its employees. Native American Joseph Medicine Crow became a war chief during World War II by completing the 4 achievements required to earn the title. These achievements were leading a successful war party on a raid, capturing an enemy's weapon, touching an enemy without killing him, and stealing an enemy's horse. The Potsdam Giants were a Prussian infantry regiment made up of soldiers who were taller than average. The regiment was founded in 1676 and ended in 1806 after Napoleon defeated Prussia in war. King Frederick William I reportedly told a French ambassador that the most beautiful girl or woman in the world would leave him indifferent, but tall soldiers were his weakness. Japan has one of the highest cremation rates in the world, at 99.97%. The practice is deeply rooted in the country's funeral traditions and has been favored for generations because of cultural, religious, and practical factors. After cremation, there is a traditional ceremony in which family members carefully collect the remains using special chopsticks and place them into an urn. Due to the high population density and limited space available for cemeteries, many Japanese cities also have modern funeral complexes and columbariums designed to house thousands of urns in relatively compact spaces. Someone who fidgets frequently can burn up to 350 calories per day. Constant movement and other small physical habits are also common traits among naturally thin people. NFL legend Jerry Rice began playing football during his sophomore year of high school, after the principal caught him misbehaving one day. Rice ran so fast that the principal told the football coach about the student's speed and offered him a spot on the team. Young children are more likely to drown in fresh water than in salt water, while older children and adults are more likely to drown in salt water than in fresh water. The largest Bible printing facility in the world is located in China. This facility has printed more than 200 million copies throughout its history and distributes Bibles in numerous languages to countries around the world. Although China is often associated with being less religious than some other nations, the country is home to one of the largest religious text printing operations on the planet. Actor and comedian Jamie Foxx's real name is Eric Marlin Bishop. He changed his first name to Jamie after discovering that women were called first at the comedy club where he performed and wanted to avoid any kind of bias. He chose Fox as his last name in honor of comedian Red Fox. In 2004, French police discovered a fully equipped movie theater inside the catacombs of Paris. They found a large movie screen, audience seating, projection equipment, film reels from many different movies, and even a fully stocked bar. According to military records from the Netherlands, Dutch men have grown an average of about 7.9 inches over the past 150 years. Today, the Dutch are among the tallest populations in the world, with an average height noticeably greater than that of many other nations. Researchers commonly attribute this increase to a combination of factors including improved nutrition, advances in healthcare, better sanitation, and a lower incidence of childhood disease. The change has been so significant that many buildings, furnishings, and design standards in the country have gradually adapted to a taller population. A Japanese beer called Unko no Kuro was brewed using coffee beans that had passed through the digestive system of an elephant. The main ingredient came from a type of coffee known for its unusual production process, in which the beans are collected after being eaten and expelled by animals. During digestion, some proteins associated with the bitterness of coffee are broken down, which can alter its final flavor. South Park episodes are written, animated, and produced in 6 days so the television series can keep up with current events. This production schedule is exceptionally fast for an animated show, as many similar productions take months to complete a single episode. Thanks to this process, the creators have been able to include references to news stories and events that occurred only days before an episode airs. The method was documented in a famous behind-the-scenes special that showed dozens of artists, writers, and technicians racing against the clock to meet deadlines. It is dangerous to ingest OxyContin tablets after crushing or breaking them because doing so alters the mechanism designed to release the medication gradually over a 12-hour period. This can cause the body to absorb a much larger amount of the medication in a short time, significantly increasing the risk of serious adverse effects. At least 43 buildings in Manhattan, New York, have their own exclusive zip codes based on their size, the number of people who occupy them, and the amount of money they generate each year. Some of these buildings receive so much mail every day that managing it through a shared zip code would be impractical. They include major office skyscrapers, business complexes, and corporate headquarters that process enormous volumes of mail and packages. In some cases, a single building may house tens of thousands of workers and visitors each day. This system helps speed up mail sorting and delivery, allowing millions of shipments to move more efficiently through one of the most densely populated and active areas in the world. Certain words from the animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series had to be censored in the United Kingdom, such as the word ninja, because of a controversy affecting the country at the time. As a result, the series was broadcast under the name Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, and several scenes were edited to reduce references to martial arts and traditional weapons. Even some toys, video games, and promotional products adopted the alternate name for the British market. These modifications remained in place for years and made the United Kingdom version one of the most unusual adaptations of a popular children's franchise. The largest tuna fish ever recorded measured about 21 feet long and weighed approximately 1,599 pounds. Despite their enormous size, Tuna are extremely fast swimmers and can reach speeds of up to 62 miles per hour. A brown dwarf star was discovered 75 light-years from Earth, and it was no warmer than a cup of coffee. The new candidate for the coldest star had a temperature of around 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Although we may think the wheel was humanity's first invention, several important inventions came before it. Sewing needles, cloth, rope, basket weaving, boats, and the flute were all invented earlier. Some of these technologies are tens of thousands of years old and were essential to human survival long before the appearance of wheeled vehicles. Needles made it possible to create fitted clothing for cold climates, while ropes and baskets helped with transporting and storing food. Archaeologists have also discovered prehistoric flutes made from bird bones and ivory, considered among the oldest known musical instruments. San Pedro Prison in Bolivia is known by many as the strangest tourist attraction in the world. The prison allows inmates' families to live with them inside, and in doing so, they have created a community. There are classrooms, small businesses, and even a soccer field. Tours are available and can receive up to 70 visitors per day. Before becoming the famous writer known as Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens worked as a steamboat pilot on the Mississippi River until the Civil War began in 1861. He came up with the name Mark Twain because it is a nautical term, meaning 2 fathoms deep. The mascots of Yuma High School in Yuma, Arizona, are the Criminals. The school is known for being the only high school in the United States whose mascot logo is legally protected by a registered trademark. Since 2016, actor Matthew McConaughey has been teaching a filmmaking course at the University of Texas at Austin. There is an annual tradition in Spain called El Colacho Jump, which means the Devil's Leap. This event is also known as the Baby Jump and dates back to 1620. Men dressed as the devil leap over babies lying on mattresses. Halloween is Grinch Night was a 1977 prequel to How the Grinch Stole Christmas that aired on ABC. It won the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Children's Program in 1978. Legendary musician Elton John released his first greatest hits album in 1974. It was his 11th official album release. A kick from martial artist Bruce Lee took only about 300 milliseconds. This means he would have been capable of delivering 3 to 4 kicks per second. His speed and precision were so remarkable that, during some film shoots, directors had to ask him to slow down certain movements so that the cameras of the time could capture them clearly. In addition to his physical abilities, he devoted many hours to studying physical conditioning, nutrition, and different fighting styles. Gamblers in ancient Greece made dice from sheep ankle bones and shoulder blades. Even today, people who use dice still refer to them as bones. The chemical formula of the salt solution that makes melted cheese smooth and creamy can be spelled as nacho, Na3C6H5O7. Sir Christopher Lee, who portrayed Saruman in the Lord of the Rings films, read the book trilogy every year from the time it was published until his death in 2015. Costco intentionally designs its stores without many signs so customers will walk through every aisle looking for things to buy. In addition, the location of many products changes periodically, encouraging shoppers to explore more areas of the warehouse during each visit. The company also offers a limited selection of items compared to traditional supermarkets, focusing on high-turnover products and bulk purchases. Drivers in the United Kingdom must report to the police if they hit a cat, dog, horse, cattle, pigs, goats, sheep, donkeys, or mules, but not badgers, deer, or foxes. This requirement is part of traffic regulations related to domestic and farm animals, since many of them have identifiable owners who may be affected by the incident. Collisions with wildlife are relatively common on rural British roads, especially during certain times of the year. Deer, for example, are involved in thousands of traffic accidents each year, causing considerable property damage and, in some cases, injuries to vehicle occupants. Actor Michael Caine's real name is Maurice Micklewhite, and it remained his legal name until 2016. He legally changed his name to Michael Caine because of increased airport security. He said he often had to spend an hour with security personnel proving that the passport he carried actually belonged to him. The 1996 Christmas comedy film Santa with Muscles, starring Hulk Hogan, was produced by the real Wolf of Wall Street, stockbroker Jordan Belfort. The film is considered one of the worst movies ever made and earned only $220,198. That amount was collected at the box office during its 2-week theatrical run. The Anglo-Portuguese alliance was ratified in the Treaty of Windsor in 1386 between the United Kingdom and Portugal, and it remains intact to this day. It is considered one of the oldest alliances in the world. According to researcher Jacob Jolle, the happiest song in the world is Mr. Blue Sky by Electric Light Orchestra. Jolle developed a formula after studying 126 songs spanning 50 years and surveying 2,000 people to determine which song made them happiest. Number 2 on the list was Don't Stop Me Now by Queen. Two high schools in Seattle, Washington delayed their start times by 1 hour so students could get more sleep. They found that students were more alert and performed better with just an extra 30 minutes of sleep. The ancient Roman charioteer Gaius Apuleius Diocles was the highest-paid professional athlete of all time. According to Peter Struck, the 2nd century champion charioteer accumulated a fortune that would be worth about $15 billion today. In 1969, a group of activists in Berkeley took over a 3-acre piece of land where the university planned to build dormitory buildings and declared it People's Park. During the 1928 Amsterdam Olympic Games, Australian rower Bobby Pearce was leading his quarterfinal race when a mother duck and her ducklings crossed in front of him. Pearce actually stopped rowing to let them pass safely, but while doing so, one of his competitors gained a lead of 5 boat lengths. Over the final 3,281 feet of the race, Pearce not only caught his competitor, but finished with a 30-second lead and set a new Olympic record. On September 21, 1939, radio station WJSV in Washington, D.C. recorded its entire 19-hour broadcast for the National Archives. This provided the National Archives with a complete artifact from the golden age of radio. The recording is available to listen to for free online. Donkeys can be excellent farm workers and will protect livestock from predators such as coyotes and stray dogs. According to Jan Donner, author of Livestock Guardians, Using Dogs, Donkeys, and Llamas to Protect Your Herd, donkeys can confront many of the same predators that dogs do, including raccoons and certain nuisance animals. But they also will not keep you awake all night barking. NASA has confirmed that Earth is greener than it was 20 years ago because of increased vegetation in China and India. Satellites have detected a significant rise in plant coverage across various regions of the planet, and much of that change has been attributed to reforestation programs, agricultural expansion, and land management initiatives in both countries. China has carried out some of the largest tree planting projects in the world, while increased agricultural production in India has also contributed to the growth of green areas visible from space. According to David Brooks of the New York Times, Jewish people make up approximately 0.2% of the world's population, but account for 54% of world chess champions. Martin Scorsese directed Michael Jackson's Bad music video the same year he directed The Color of Money in 1986. Sour Patch Kids candy was originally called Mars Men until 1985, when it was renamed to capitalize on the success of Cabbage Patch Kids. Harriet Tubman once pretended to read a newspaper on a train to avoid being recognized by her former owner. Her former owner knew that Tubman was illiterate and ignored the African-American woman reading on the train, not realizing it was her. According to Business Insider, it is healthier to eat 2 hamburgers and no French fries than 1 hamburger and a serving of French fries. This is due to the fact that French fries are considered empty calories. When rapper Eminem was being sentenced on a weapons charge in 2001, the judge told him that it was time for him to please stand up. The official typeface of the Girl Scouts of the United States is called Omnes. According to Title 27, Section 5.22 of the United States Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Code, vodka must be distilled or treated until it has no distinctive character, aroma, taste, or color. If it fails to meet any of these requirements, it is not considered vodka. NASA astronaut Harrison Schmitt suffered an allergic reaction to lunar dust. After collecting samples and returning to the module, Schmitt still had dust on his boots and suit. When he removed them, he immediately became congested. Inventor Nikola Tesla claimed that he never slept more than 2 hours per night. A journalist who became his friend supported the claim by recounting how Tesla called him at 3 in the morning to say he was solving a problem and, after debating theories with himself and finding the solution, simply hung up. On December 4, 1956, Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash recorded an impromptu session at Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee. This historic moment in rock and roll became known as the $1 Million Quartet. When actor Steve McQueen was in the United States Marine Corps, he was reduced in rank to private 7 times for being rebellious. After spending 41 days in the brig, McQueen focused on his responsibilities and later saved 5 fellow Marines from a tank that was sinking into the sea. He was promoted to the Honor Guard, where he was assigned to guard President Harry Truman's presidential yacht. The 2001 stoner comedy The Wash, starring Method Man and Redman, was directed by Bob Dylan's son, Jesse Dylan. It was his directorial debut. Ninjas in Japan during the 17th and 18th centuries avoided eating strong-smelling foods such as garlic and leeks to prevent body odor. This was due to concerns about being detected by enemies while attempting to remain hidden. A laptop containing samples of 6 of the most notorious pieces of malware in history was auctioned as part of an artwork titled The Persistence of Chaos, created by internet artist Guo Odong. The piece was conceived to make digital threats tangible and sold for more than $1 million at auction. While singer Diana Ross was recording the hit song I'm Coming Out, she was unaware that the phrase carried a widely recognized cultural meaning related to personal identity. After learning about that interpretation, Ross became concerned about how it might affect public perception of the song and believed that songwriter Nile Rodgers was putting her career at risk. The voice actress who portrayed Kimmy Finster on the animated television show Rugrats is Dion Kwan, and she is legally blind. All of her scripts were written in Braille for her. Simply humming helps increase the production of nitric oxide in the sinuses, which is one of the body's defenses for eliminating harmful bacteria in the nasal passages. One of the few historically accurate accounts of Pocahontas describes an occasion when she performed acrobatics and physical displays to attract the attention of European settlers inside a palisade. In 1985, 2 co-workers at Sears recorded a song called Showstoppa to help a friend with a class project. The song became popular and began receiving airplay on New York City radio stations. This marked the beginning of the rap group Salt and Peppa. There is a bed that is actually larger than a California king called an Alaskan king, which measures approximately 9 feet by 9 feet. Researcher Dov Sakirov studied 28 healthy volunteers while they were having bowel movements to determine whether squatting or sitting on a toilet was better. He recorded the times and concluded that the average time it took volunteers to complete the process while squatting was 51 seconds. The average time while sitting ranged from 114 to 130 seconds. The first known recording of a music video made in space was a revised version of Space Oddity by David Bowie, performed by Commander Chris Hadfield while aboard the International Space Station. The mascot of the Pittsburgh Pirates baseball team was involved in the distribution of illegal substances to some players during the 1980s. The case became one of the most well-known scandals associated with professional baseball during that era. Hot Pockets were originally called Chunk Stuffers, and they are all manufactured in Mount Sterling, Kentucky. Screenwriter Charlie Kaufman was having trouble adapting the book The Orchid Thief into a movie. He decided to write about himself struggling to adapt the book, and turned that into the film adaptation, Adaptation. According to the National Foster Youth Institute, only half of all foster children in the United States will have any type of paid employment by the time they are 24 years old. 7 out of 10 girls who leave the foster care system will become pregnant before reaching the age of 21. According to ancient records, the Buddha recommended eating rice porridge because it had 5 benefits. He claimed that it calms hunger, relieves thirst, settles gas, cleanses the bladder, and promotes the digestion of undigested food. In 2014, the dating app Tinder achieved its first match on the continent of Antarctica between 2 research scientists. Tootsie Rolls have been certified kosher by the Orthodox Union since 2009. NBA legend Manu Ginobili recorded more steals than points during his entire playing career. Alexandre Dumas, who wrote The Three Musketeers, was the son of the first black French general, Thomas Alexandre Dumas. He was the highest-ranking black military officer in history until 1975. Shiraz wine originally comes from Iran, dates back to the 9th century, and was once considered the finest wine in the world. Before the Islamic Revolution of 1979, there were more than 300 wineries in Iran, but today, none remain. In the Harry Potter films, the ghost of a 14-year-old girl named Moaning Myrtle was portrayed by a 37-year-old actress named Shirley Henderson. According to the Humane Research Council, 84% of vegetarians eventually return to eating meat. This conclusion was based on a survey of 11,399 adults aged 17 and older. In 1969, actor Samuel L. Jackson was expelled from Morehouse College for locking members of the Board of Trustees inside a building for 2 days as part of a protest. One of those board members was Martin Luther King Sr., the father of Martin Luther King Jr. A harbor seal named Hoover was capable of imitating human speech. The orphaned pup was discovered by a man named George Swallow and lived in a pond in his backyard. The two became close friends, and Hoover even learned to say hello and come here with a New England accent similar to Swallow's. Hoover spent the rest of his life at the New England Aquarium as he grew older. The great Renaissance artist, scholar, and architect Michelangelo carved hearts into the pupils of the statue of David. According to Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member Graham Nash, Jimi Hendrix was unbeatable at the board game Risk, especially while under the influence of LSD. In 2007, comedian John Lovitz slammed fellow comedian Andy Dick's head into a bar at the Laugh Factory in Los Angeles. The sandals of the Statue of Liberty are 25 feet long. This means her shoe size is a colossal 879. Alice, the daughter of United States President Theodore Roosevelt, chewed gum, played poker, and smoked cigarettes. She also had a pet garter snake that she kept in her purse and pulled out at unexpected moments. Honolulu, Hawaii, and Juneau, Alaska, are the only state capitals whose road systems are not connected to other roads within their respective states. After artist Frida Kahlo discovered that her husband had been unfaithful to her, she found the woman involved and began a romantic relationship with her as an act of revenge. There is only one McDonald's in Cuba, and it is located at the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base in southeastern Cuba. The naval base also has a Baskin-Robbins, Pizza Hut, KFC, and Taco Bell. These restaurants are owned and operated by the Department of the Navy, and Cuban citizens are prohibited from visiting them. Eating 100 grams of red ants provides 14 grams of protein and 48 grams of calcium. This quantity of ants also contains fewer than 100 calories, making them low in carbohydrates. Former Major League Baseball pitcher Randy Johnson is now a photographer who works at sporting events and concerts. The logo for his photography website features a bird that he struck with a baseball during a spring training game in 2001. When you are relaxing your jaw, your tongue should rest gently behind your upper front teeth. Your upper and lower teeth should not touch each other, and your lips should be closed but not tightly. Actor Charlie Day has worn the same pair of Vans sneakers in every episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. In 2015, a man in Texas shot at an armadillo, but the bullet ricocheted off its hard shell and struck the man in the face. Fortunately, he was okay, but he had to be airlifted to a nearby hospital so doctors could wire his jaw shut. Around 70% of all web traffic in the world flows through Loudoun County in Northern Virginia. According to the American Automobile Association, it is illegal to drive with hazard lights activated in a large number of states across the United States. The chief executive officer of Goldman Sachs is David Solomon, who is also an electronic music producer performing under the name DJ D-Sol. There is a grade in the Japanese academic system that is higher than an A, which is an S. It is rarely awarded to students. Johnny Gilbert, the legendary voice of the game show Jeopardy, is currently 97 years old. Despite his age, he continues to participate in the program and is recognized as one of the longest-lasting figures in the history of American television. Although Adolf Hitler admired Benito Mussolini, the feeling was not mutual. Mussolini claimed that the Germans were descended from people who were illiterate when Rome had Caesar, Virgil, and Augustus. After Franklin D. Roosevelt, the United States has not had another president who could speak a second language. The famous chef Julia Child helped develop a shark repellent for soldiers stranded in the ocean during World War II. The United States military developed a precision missile that uses blades instead of explosives to eliminate a target. The goal is to reduce civilian casualties after it is launched from a drone. Driving a car for long periods of time makes you tired because your brain keeps your muscles active due to the vehicle's small vibrations. This maintains your posture, and the constant work of your muscles is what causes fatigue. Sliced bread was illegal in the United States from January 1943 until March 1943, in an effort to conserve resources for World War II. The Beatles were all under 30 years old when they broke up. The youngest was George Harrison at 27, and the oldest was Ringo Starr at 29. The animation studio Topcraft, best known for the 1977 animated film The Hobbit, eventually split into two studios. One went on to create the television series Thundercats, while the other became Studio Ghibli. After gangster Frank Gusenberg was attacked during the St. Valentine's Day massacre, he still refused to reveal the identity of his killer. His final words were that he was no snitch. Countries that end in stan, such as Afghanistan and Pakistan, are named that way because the suffix stan is an ancient Persian word meaning land, nation, or place. Dracula has appeared in more films than any other horror character, with more than 200 appearances. This figure does not even include comedies or animated productions. Since the publication of Bram Stoker's novel in 1897, the character has been reinterpreted countless times in film, television, theater, and other media. Actors from different generations have portrayed the famous vampire, offering versions ranging from an elegant aristocrat to a supernatural monster. The first person to be convicted using DNA fingerprint evidence was a British man named Colin Pitchfork in 1987. A study conducted by the University of Durham found that some well-known fairy tales are much older than previously thought. Beauty and the Beast can be traced back to Indo-European lineages from between 2,500 and 6,000 years ago. Jack and the Beanstalk, also known as the boy who stole the ogre's treasure, can be traced back more than 5,000 years. King George V of the United Kingdom was euthanized with an injection containing 750 milligrams of morphine and 1 gram of cocaine. Tuesday the 13th is considered an unlucky day in Spanish-speaking countries, not Friday the 13th. In Italian culture, Friday the 17th is considered an unlucky day. A man in New Jersey was charged $3,750 for a bottle of wine after a waitress told him it cost $37.50. Actor Thomas Jane was originally offered the role of Rick Grimes in the television series The Walking Dead. However, he turned it down to play the lead role in Hung, where he portrayed a gigolo. The Chicago Cubs finished the 2010s with a winning record. Their winning percentage was above .500 for the first time since the 1930s. George A. Romero's film Night of the Living Dead is the most downloaded movie on the Internet Archive, with more than 3.1 million downloads, because it is in the public domain. Since the beginning of the 20th century, 25 new islands have formed in the ocean due to volcanism, erosion, and glacial retreat. Even though actor Paul Newman quit smoking 30 years before his death, he died from lung cancer. Apollo Robbins is a legendary pickpocket who once took the watches, badges, and keys of Jimmy Carter's Secret Service detail. The total contact area between a train's wheels and the track is only slightly larger than the size of a silver dollar coin. Historic pubs in England have unusual names containing words such as hound or boot because many customers were illiterate and could recognize only the symbols on the signs. Before he died, Ivan the Terrible never told anyone about a secret library he inherited from his father, and it is still being searched for today. The library is said to contain rare Greek, Latin, Chinese, and Egyptian works. Film director Rian Johnson is actually married to film critic Karina Longworth. In 2013, the Fresno chapter of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club waited in line outside a Walmart for 5 days to buy every bicycle inside and donate them to charity. Cartoonist and entrepreneur Robert Ripley, creator of Ripley's Believe It or Not, became the New York State handball champion in 1926. Alexander Doba was a Polish kayaker who crossed the Atlantic Ocean by kayak on 3 separate occasions. He completed his final voyage at the age of 70. NASCAR pit crew members used to be mechanics who underwent physical training. Today, however, there are more athletes training to become mechanics because of how physically demanding the job has become. The Guano Islands Act allows citizens of the United States to take possession of an uninhabited island on behalf of the United States if it contains guano deposits. Actor and comedian Seth Rogen once had an octopus named after him at the Vancouver Aquarium. Its name was Seth Rogen because octopuses are cephalopods. Because the 2013 science fiction film Riddick went so far over budget, actor Vin Diesel had to mortgage his house and take out loans to complete production. There is a mythical creature in Pennsylvania called the squonk. It is described as ugly, ashamed of its appearance, and crying most of the time. If someone corners it, it will dissolve into a puddle of liquid. When Dan Rather was a reporter, he wanted to experience the effects of heroin and write a story about it. He convinced police officers to provide him with a dose. The doctor who delivered country music singer Dolly Parton was paid with a sack of cornmeal because her family was very poor. Queen Victoria wrote around 25 words a day throughout her adult life, and her personal diary eventually reached a total of 122 volumes. According to the website Statista.com, the Major League Baseball team that sells the most expensive hot dog in the league is the Washington Nationals at $7 per hot dog. The team that sells the least expensive hot dog is the Baltimore Orioles at only $1.50 per hot dog. Since 1988, it has been illegal for blind people to hunt in Wisconsin, even if they possess a hunting license. Canada still retains 91% of the forest cover that existed at the beginning of European settlement. In addition, it is home to about 9% of the world's forests, making it one of the countries with the largest forested areas on Earth. Its vast forests provide habitat for species such as moose, black bears, wolves, and lynxes, and they also contain enormous reserves of fresh water. Some of its forested regions are so remote that they remain virtually untouched and have barely been explored by humans.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.